Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Bhagavad-Gita as it is. Chapter 3, texts 17 and 18. Interested in a very short purport of 17. Then I'll read 17 and then we can chant 18 together. 17. For one who takes pleasure in the self, whose human life is one of self-realization, who sits satisfied in the self only, fully satiated, for him there is no duty. Purport. A person who is fully Krishna conscious and is fully satisfied by his acts in Krishna consciousness no longer has any duty to perform. Due to his being Krishna conscious, all impiety within is instantly cleansed, an effect of many, many thousands of yoga performances. By such clearing of consciousness, one becomes fully confident of his eternal position in relation with the Supreme. His duty thus becomes self-illuminated by the grace of the Lord. Therefore he has no longer any obligation to the Vedic injunctions. Such a Krishna conscious person is no longer interested in material activities and no longer takes pleasure in material arrangements like wine, women, and similar infatuation. Text number 18. Naiva tasya kriten artho narite neha kachana natasya sarabhuteshu kaschit artha vyapasvicha. Word for word. Na, never. Eva, certainly. Tasya, is. Itena, a discharge of duty. Artha, purpose. Na, nor. Akritena, without discharge of duty. Ya, in this world. Kachana, whatever. Na, never. Sa, and. Avza, of him. Sarva, Bhuteshu, among all living beings. Kaschit, any. Artha, purpose. Vyapasvijaha, taking shelter of. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. A self-realized man has no purpose to fulfill in the discharge of his prescribed duties, nor is he any reason not to perform such work, nor is there any need to depend on any other living being. Purport. A self-realized man is no longer obliged to perform any prescribed duties, save and except activities in Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness is not inactivity either, as we'll explain in the following verses. A Krishna conscious man does not take shelter of any person, man or demigod. Whatever he does in Krishna consciousness is sufficient in the discharge of his obligation. Om Arganataram Jasha Janatana Sakaya Sakshu Mitam Jana Tasme Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Tapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tantaswa Parantikam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasade Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Translation once again. A self-realized man has no purpose to fulfill and discharge of his prescribed duties, nor has he any reason not to perform such work, nor has he any need to depend on any other living being. So Baladev Vidyabhushan gives his commentary on this verse. There is no result, artha, by his performance of prescribed action, kritena, for the purpose of realizing Atma, and he incurs no obstacles for seeing Atma by non-performance of prescribed actions for seeing Atma. Because of his nature, he sees the Atma already. It is not that he should fear obstacles from the Devatas by neglecting prescribed actions, including Devata worship or demigod worship. Thus attempts to please them by performing prescribed actions which entail worshipping them. The Shrutis, of course, describe the Devatas as being opposed to knowledge of the Atma. So this verse is starting from 17 to 35, a series of verses which deal with karma yoga, performing detached work to set an example. This verse, 17 to 18, was preceded by 16, which gives us the opposite understanding, or the opposite of what most people do. My dear Arjuna, one who does not follow in human life the cycle of sacrifice thus established by the Vedas certainly lives a life full of sin. Living only for satisfying his senses, such a person lives in vain. So that means he's useless or wasting his human form of life. Because there are 8,400,000 species of life, and 400,000 are human. And of that 400,000, which includes the demigods, only a certain percentage are civilized human beings. A civilized human being is a person who follows the Vedic injunctions and who accepts a spiritual master, a bona fide spiritual master, and tries to develop his Krishna consciousness or God consciousness. Otherwise, the whole world is made up of people who are not civilized. We're reading in the morning class, 7th Canto, Chapter 15, the civilized, what a civilized society is. Describes the nature of a civilized society. Now there are 4 yugas. In Satya Yuga, 100% of the people were Krishna conscious. In Treta Yuga, 75%. In Dwapara Yuga, 50%. And in Kali Yuga, 25%. But now, it's practically nil. The whole world is going on under the assumption, false names and false forms. And they think that the only business in human life is to fill one's belly and satisfy his desire for sex life. So, of course, eating, sleeping, mating, and defending is the propensity of every living entity, especially the animals. Animals are eating, sleeping, mating, defending. The human beings are eating, but maybe eating in a fancy restaurant or eating nice food stuff. They may be sleeping in a nice apartment or house. They may be having sex life, and they go through make arrangements to defend themselves and keep their property safe. So this is also there in the animal kingdom, but it's not as polished, or it's not as sophisticated. The dogs have sex life in the street, the hogs eat stool, birds and beasts live in trees, live in the caves, lives in the jungle. But it's the same activities. If you have sex life on the street, or if you have sex life in an apartment, it's not a different activity. It's the same activity. It's only done in a different way. And if you eat certain kind of food in a nice restaurant, or if you eat fruits and berries from the forest, it's the same activity, but it's done in a different way. So this is the distinction must be there between a human being and an animal. If people don't make such distinction, then they're living a life in vain, and they can be considered no more than an animal. Prabhupada called this a cat and dog society. Misguided, misdirected, foolish, childish society. Because people don't know how to utilize the human form of life. The dogs and cats have limited intelligence. The super soul is there in every living entity, and the super soul dictates to the animals how to get their food, how to live in the world. But the intelligence is not there. The sign, they put a sign on the grass, do not walk on the grass. So the dog or the cat or the monkey, they can't read signs, and they can walk on the grass and no one bothers them. But a human being can read, and therefore he doesn't do that because he knows it's wrong. But the animals can't discriminate between right and wrong. So when we get to the human form of life, we shouldn't misuse it like an animal. So even though one has a human form of life, Arur Kichena Padam Padam Seva Gokura. Even in the human form of life, people come to holy place to take baths and never inquire about self-realization, and therefore they're no better than the Seva Gokura, a cow or an ass. In some places, people go to take baths in the sacred river and they wash their car. They bring their car and wash their car at the same time. So this is going on. People don't understand that just to visit a holy place and take baths is not sufficient. One doesn't get any education that way. Of course, this doesn't apply. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says this rule doesn't apply to the Ganges and Yamuna, but it applies to other places, other sacred rivers of lesser quality. So people do come to the Yamuna, do come to the Ganges, take baths, and they get purified. But if they don't inquire Tato Brahmi Jignasa, then they can't understand how to utilize the human form of life. And therefore, even though people come to the holy dham, take darshan of deities, do all the things, do parikram, go take bath, Yamuna, whatever, they still go home, wherever they live, and engage in mundane activities like watching television and eating meat, taking intoxication, having illicit sex. So because they don't have a spiritual master, they can't discriminate right from wrong. And if your father wasn't a devotee, he couldn't tell you what was right and wrong. So tad vidi paripatena, paripasena sevaya, upidekyanti te gyanas tapa darshanaha. That one must accept the spiritual master and require from him simplicity, render service unto him. He can impart knowledge unto you, because he's seen the truth. So this is a bona fide spiritual master. So the three stages in spiritual life, the Kanistha Adhikari, the Madhyama Adhikari, Uttama Adhikari. So what's being described here is the Uttama Adhikari, the topmost devotee. The Kanistha Adhikari and the Madhyama Adhikari can also act as spiritual master, but they may not be able to give sufficient guidance. But Diksha Guru, there's two kinds of gurus, Diksha Guru and Shiksha Guru. So the Diksha Guru is one. The Diksha Guru gives the Harinam initiation, changes your name. Unless you change your name and take Harinam initiation, then all your attempts to get out of the material world will be baffled. So one must take initiation, Ado Guru Ashraya. This is the first principle laid down by Rupa Goswami in Nectar Devotion. That first one must accept the spiritual master. But the spiritual master should be a bona fide spiritual master, not a Mayavadi, not someone that's not in any disciplic succession. There's 4 disciplic successions, one coming from Lord Shiva, one coming from the 4 Kumaras, one coming from Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune, and one coming from Brahma. These are the only 4 bona fide sampradayas. And if one doesn't take initiation from someone in one of those 4 sampradayas, then his mantra will not have any effect. He cannot expect to make spiritual advancement. So there are many cheaters in this world who pose as gurus who claim to be God and have millions of disciples, but they can't take their disciples back to God. They can't even take themselves back to Godhead because they're not in a line, a spiritual line, bona fide spiritual line. So this people should know. Before one takes initiation, one should examine his guru for 1 year, and the guru should examine the disciple for 1 year. And then if there's mutual agreement between the disciple and guru, then the guru can give the person Harinam, Diksha, or initiate him into chanting the holy name. Narottam Das Thakur was instructed by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to go to Vrindavan and take initiation from Lokanath Das Goswami. But Lokanath Das Goswami made a vow never to take any disciples. So Narottam went to the ashram of Lokanath and stayed there and rendered menial service to Lokanath Goswami and would chant 2 lakhs of the Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, every day. And he would render menial service to his guru, Lokanath Das Goswami. So every day, Lokanath Goswami, in the morning time, which is natural, would go to answer the call of nature in the forest, and after he did that, Narottam Das would go there and clean the place. So Lokanath Goswami was going there every day and was noticing that the place was clean. He was wondering how it was possible. So one day he hid himself in the bushes after he finished, and then he saw that Narottam was coming there to clean the place. So he was pleased with Narottam, so after 1 year he accepted him as his only disciple, or he may have one more disciple, but not many. So the Guru Krishna Prasadi by Bhakti Lata Beach. The Guru at the time of initiation gives the seed of devotional service and takes the karma of his disciple, the previous karma. So if when one takes initiation with a bona fide spiritual master, then he has no more karma. He's not doesn't incur more karma. So the spiritual master accepts the karma, but he accepts the karma on behalf of Krishna, and Krishna will assimilate that karma. But if the disciple doesn't act properly and doesn't follow the instructions of the spiritual master, then the spiritual master will have to suffer a reaction. So one should be careful after taking initiation not to do something against the principles that will cause his spiritual master to suffer. And one time Prabhupada was sick, and he said he was sick because 80% of his disciples weren't following strictly. So the disciple and the spiritual master have a mutual contract, and Prabhupada told his disciples that they should chant 16 rounds, follow the 4 regular principles for their whole life, and then he would take them back to Godhead. Unfortunately, Prabhupada initiated 5,000 people. Of that number, we don't know how many are still living on the planet, and we don't know how many are following Prabhupada's instructions. So what is the meaning? Disciple means someone who takes discipline or follows. In 2 places in Srimad Bhagavatam, it says that one must take the dust from the lotus feet of the spiritual master and spread it all over his body. And that means King Jadbharat told King Rahugana this. The other was, I believe, Prithu Maharaj. So, or maybe it was Dhruva Maharaj. It was Dhruva Maharaj said this, that one must take the dust from the lotus feet of the spiritual master, spread it all over his body, which means that you follow his instructions. So Prabhupada gave people the general instruction, and he gave different instructions to different people. So those who are following Prabhupada's instructions, you have a better chance of going back to Godhead than those who fell away. So these two verses, 17 and 18, are talking about a person whose Atmarati takes pleasure in the self alone. And he sees the super soul and the soul and all living entities. And for him, there's no obstacles. Loss or gain, whatever happens, he's always equal opposed. So, of course, the Prabhupada was a practical man. Devotees, he told the devotees were negotiating to get some place for a temple in New York. And Prabhupada told the devotees, don't give the man any money, Lakshmi, until you get the contract or get the deed. But they didn't listen. They gave the man the money, and then the man tried to cheat the devotees and tell them that somehow he tried to cheat them by taking their money but didn't give them what they wanted. So they went to Prabhupada and they said, Prabhupada, this is what happened, Krishna's mercy. But Prabhupada was not equal opposed at that time. He said, no, that is not Krishna's mercy, that's your stupidity. So if we do something against the instruction of spiritual master, you can't expect him to be happy or to be satisfied. But they did. Somehow they managed to get most of their money back. So in a different instance, like in the case of the Jew, they're trying to get the land for the Jew temple, and they're fighting with Mr. N, Mr. Nair, who was a demon, and had sold the land to someone else, and cheated that person, and took the land back. So Prabhupada gave the man a down payment, and the Mr. N, he tried to do the same thing with the devotees. And so Prabhupada went to him and said, okay, if you don't want to give us the land, then give us our money back and we'll go somewhere else. But he wouldn't agree to that either. So at one point, the devotees just couldn't fight anymore. It became too much trouble to court cases and trying to get the land. They decided to drop the case, but Prabhupada said, no, don't drop the case. You continue. I want that land. Because Prabhupada had promised Radha Rasabihari that he would get that land and build them a nice, wonderful temple. And so Prabhupada seemingly wasn't equal opposed in that situation. He didn't say, okay, forget about it. No, he wanted to fight, like Arjuna. Krishna told Arjuna, you have to fight. So Prabhupada was a fighter when it was necessary. So Prabhupada wanted to remain on the battlefield in the material world up until the point of leaving his body. told him in New York, if he left his body in New York, they could put his samadhi on top of the building. At that time, they had an 11-story building in Manhattan, a very nice temple, and Prabhupada was very happy there that they had such a nice arrangement. Unfortunately, when Prabhupada left the planet, they sold that place. But so Prabhupada was out there in the battlefield, and but he was always Krishna conscious. He was the perfect example of a pure devotee. It says that one is, you can understand the pure devotee because it was illumination. So Prabhupada was shining, and he was in pure goodness, Shuddha Sattva. So therefore, he had no material desires, no interest in wine, women, or such things. He only wanted Krishna consciousness. And Prabhupada's daily life was a perfect example. As the 6 Goswamis, Ajahara Parasascha, they can't go over eating and sleeping. They only spend most of their hours, 24 hours, engaged in the hearing and chanting about the pastimes of Sri Sri Radha and Krishna. They were very strict. And Prabhupada was the same way. He would sleep for 2 hours in the afternoon, 2 hours at night. He would sleep for 4 hours, and then he'd get up at midnight and chant japa, and then translate Srimad Bhagavatam from Sanskrit to English with his purport, his transliteration, English translation, and purports. So this was not the work of an ordinary man or someone who's attached to sense gratification. Prabhupada had no other business but to preach Krishna consciousness, to establish Krishna consciousness on the order of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who said that the holy name of the Lord, the chanting of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, would be chanted in every town and village all over the world. So Prabhupada's spiritual master ordered him in 1922, when Prabhupada was a householder and was a reformist and was involved with the movement to drive the British out of India. So Prabhupada argued with Bhaktisiddhanta and said Krishna consciousness will not be effective as long as India was a dependent country and was not a free country, still under British rule. But Bhaktisiddhanta said no, this Krishna consciousness movement has nothing to do with politics, and it can't wait for any material situation. So he ordered Prabhupada to chant, to spread Krishna consciousness in the English-speaking world. That meant countries like America, Australia, England, Europe, wherever people speak English as the first language. And so Prabhupada, at that time, from that time on, he took that as his life and soul, and he spent his life practicing Krishna consciousness so that he would be prepared to go to what was the most degraded world, the material world, especially America, which every single person was in the mode of passion of ignorance. No one knew anything about God consciousness. There were many religions, but they were kaita dharma, cheating religions, because they couldn't teach people how to love God. And they couldn't even teach people what was sinful and what was not sinful. In the Catholic Church, they have the practice where people go once a week and confess their sins. to the priest. The priest sits in a booth, and the people go and say to the priest that I did this and I did that this week. But he says okay, but he doesn't tell them that you shouldn't do it again. So they go for confession and confess their sins, but it's like the elephant. We have the elephant in Mayapur, and then that elephant, if you see it, it takes a nice bath. They have a little lake there, a pool of water there, takes his bath. As soon as he comes out of the bath, what does he do? He puts dirt all over his body. He puts sand all over his body. So people who are confessing their sins, going to church, they're just making a show of religion. It's Kaitava Dharma, it's just show bottle religion. It's not the real thing. They're not getting love of God. They're not giving up their sinful activities. So when Prabhupada was preaching to the cardinal in France, he told the cardinal that we should not eat meat because it's sinful. Killing innocent animals is sinful. And the first commandment in the Bible, 10 Commandments, is thou shalt not kill. So the cardinal said, but the children are hungry, they have to eat. But we have so many children in our movement, they're not eating meat, and they're not hungry, and they're not starving, and they don't have malnutrition. So children don't have to eat meat. But the cardinal thought that way, and Prabhupada tried to convince them in so many ways not to eat meat, and then he tried to convince them, well, if you have to eat meat, don't eat the cow, because the cow is like your mother. The cow gives you milk. And milk is a life-giving substance. The child gets the milk from the mother, then they get the milk from the cow. So Prabhupada said, then don't kill the cow. But still he didn't agree. He couldn't understand what Prabhupada was saying. And then Prabhupada said, if you want to love God, then if you're sinful, then you can't love God. So in this way, Prabhupada set the example. It says here, Yad yada chariti shrestas tata devataro jana sat yad parmano kurute lokastad anuvartante. Whatever action a great man performs, common men follow, and whatever standards he sets by exemplary acts, all the world pursues. So those who recognize Srila Prabhupada as being a pure devotee of Krishna were able to take up Krishna consciousness. They had the Sukriti from past life. It says that if you were a devotee in your past life, then you can take it up again in your next life. Or they got the mercy of Srila Prabhupada just by seeing him and meeting him. So in this way, we can't expect everyone in the world to become Krishna conscious. But gradually our movement is expanding, and more people are reading Srila Prabhupada's books and taking to Krishna consciousness, understanding that they're wasting their human form of life, just simply engage in sense gratification, which is called chewing the chewed. Prahlad Maharaj calls it chewing the chewed. The sense gratification, you get a stick of sugar cane and you chew it, and it tastes very sweet, but you don't swallow it, you spit it out. But if you come back later and chew it again, what you spit out, it doesn't have any taste. So this is what sense gratification is like, chewing the chewed. You can't get any satisfaction from that. So people may have, even if a man has a beautiful wife, he may go to a prostitute at the same time. One man had leprosy, but he wanted to go to see a prostitute. He was attracted to a prostitute. So his wife went to the prostitute and told him the situation. So she said, okay, you bring your husband here. So she brought him there. And then first she said, let me give you something to eat. So she brought him some sweet rice. And she put 1 cup of sweet rice in a silver cup and 1 cup of sweet rice in a steel cup. And asked him to taste them. So he did that. So she said, does it taste any different? And he said no. So he was trying to enjoy in a different way. He already had a nice chaste wife, but he thought if he went to a prostitute, he would get a different kind of taste. So it's like that in the material world. People are trying to etch out or trying to get some kind of sense gratification as much as possible, but they're never satisfied. There's always anxiety. It says in the Krishna book that everyone in the material world is morose, especially even the jnanis and yogis, because they can't fulfill all their desires. But here it says a Krishna conscious person, he has no material desires. He's a Atmarati, or he takes pleasure in the self alone. Pramjisvar Nivartante. So it's amazing that people come to Krishna consciousness who are drug addicts, who are addicted to sex life, meeting and gambling, but immediately they can stop those activities. There are so many organizations to get people off of drugs, but they can't do it. When Prabhupada gave the order to give up sense gratification, give up intoxication, including coffee, tea, and cigarettes. So, and chant Hare Krishna. So by chanting Hare Krishna, Pramjisvar Nivardante, we come to the mode of goodness. The other activities are in the mode of passion and ignorance. But when you come to the mode of goodness, then you can give up the lower taste, which is is never satisfying. To satisfy the senses is like trying to put out a fire by pouring ghee in the fire. It only burns more and more. So people are never peaceful in this world. People are morose because they can't satisfy their senses, no matter how much they try. A man may have so much money and maybe have so many cars and have so many material things, have so many girlfriends, but he's not satisfied in any case. And one man in Delhi, one day his son-in-law was out on the street and got a Bhagavad-Gita. And he gave it to his father-in-law and said, I'm not going to read this, you take it. So he started reading the Bhagavad-Gita, started going to the temple, and started to realize that he should change his lifestyle. But his family members were not happy. He stopped eating meat, he stopped taking intoxication, he told his girlfriends to stop calling him, and he stopped gambling. But the family members all thought he was crazy. You've gone crazy. Now you don't do the normal things that we do. So eventually, though, they started to at least appreciate her a little. His wife at least became a little bit more favorable, started chanting a little bit. But this is there are many cases like this where people came to realize by reading Prabhupada's books, by reading Bhagavad-Gita, that they were going in the wrong direction. If you get in a taxi and they ask the driver to take me to Delhi, but he turns left on the highway and goes toward Agra instead of going to Delhi, you'll never get to your destination. So people are engaged in going in the wrong direction and living a life where they're going to have to go to hell and suffer for all their sinful activities. So the Krishna conscious person is fully confident in the nectar of devotion. It says patience, determination, confidence are and things that devotees should have. Should be confident that this is the right path and that there's nothing else in this world. If the Krishna conscious devotee shouldn't think there's any other business in this world but becoming Krishna conscious. Even if one is a householder, he has to work outside, he has to maintain his family. He shouldn't stop that work, but he should continue practicing Krishna consciousness to the best of his ability. Here also says a Krishna conscious person is not inactive. Many people think spiritual life means you go to the forest and you become inactive. But Krishna consciousness is a life full of activity. We rise at 4 o'clock in the morning, go to Mangalarti, chant japa, do so many services. All day long we're active. But at the same time, Krishna has told Arjuna that you should fight, but at the same time you should think of me. So Krishna says, Mamana Baba Mad Bhaktom, Mam Yaji Mam Maskuru. Always think of me, become my devotee, worship me, offer obeisances unto me, you will come to me without a doubt. So whatever we're doing, we do it for Krishna. If we're doing banking, if we're doing shopping, if we're doing anything for Krishna's service, then that is the same as thinking of Krishna. It's a Krishna conscious activity. It's not different. So I may have to go somewhere, go to the market to buy something for the deity worship. So that's Krishna conscious activity. Although it may seem like a mundane activity, but it's not, because it's not for my sense gratification, it's for Krishna's pleasure. So the devotee is on the Brahma Bhuta platform. Brahma Bhuta Prashanatma Nashoshiti Nakanchati Samasarveshu Bhuteshu Mad Bhaktim Labate Param. And this one's spiritual life begins when one realizes he's not this body, that he's a spirit soul, Atma. And also Mam Charena bhakti-yoga sevate Saguna Statita Itam Brahma Bhuya Kalpate. That when one comes to the level of Brahman, unceasing, unfailing, then that's when spiritual life begins, when one doesn't fall down in any circumstance. You can't be allured anymore. In the material world, everyone's under the influence of Mahamaya. And that Durga means fort. And she's in charge of keeping the conditioned souls bound up in the material world. So she keeps everyone as prisoners in the fort. But there's also the Yoga Maya Durga, and when someone wants to serve Krishna, then she can release that person from the influence of Mahamaya, and one can come on the influence of Yoga Maya. So a pure devotee, not only does he realize that he's a spirit soul, and the super souls in everyone's heart, but Yoga Maya doesn't even let him think of mundane things or any kind of sense gratification. Although he may talk about his past life, he may appear to be mundane, to be an ordinary person to some people, his consciousness is always on the platform of pure devotional service. So this is the difference between a pure devotee of Krishna and anyone else in this world. And also it says here that a Krishna conscious man does not take shelter of any person, man or demigod. Whatever he does in Krishna consciousness is sufficient in discharge of his obligation. When Krishna was in Vrindavan and as a small boy, he saw that his father was arranging for a sacrifice. So Krishna said to his father, "Tell me, what's this sacrifice? What are you doing?" So Krishna's father said, "You're just a small boy. You won't understand these things. No, never mind." But Krishna said, "You shouldn't keep secret from family members." So Nanda Maharaj said, "Okay, we're going to have a yajna, fire sacrifice to Indra, because we're Vaishyas and we're dependent on Indra for rainfall." So Krishna said, "That's not necessary." And Bhagavad-Gita says, "Less intelligent people worship the demigod." Said Indra pours water on the land, pours water on the sea. He pours water everywhere. So it's not really Indra who's responsible for your agriculture. So better to postpone this Indra Yajna and worship Govardhan Hill. So in this way, Krishna convinced his father not to have Indra Yajna, but to worship Govardhan Hill. Of course, Indra was proud and puffed up with his position and sent torrents of rain, tried to devastate Vrindavan. But, so the Krishna conscious person, we don't need to go to any other demigod or any other person to become God conscious. Everything is there in Krishna consciousness. Simply have to chant the holy name, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. The Prabhupada told his disciples to chant 16 rounds every day and follow the four principles, but those 16 rounds, we should try to chant without committing the 10 offenses to the holy name, without offenses chanting. There's the Nama Parad, where we're chanting and still committing offenses. Then there's Namabhas, which is the clearing stage. In the morning, when it's dark outside, when it starts to become light, the sun is not visible, but it's light. And gradually the sun comes up. So this is Namabhas, the clearing stage. And from Namabhas, one will experience ecstatic symptoms, like tears will come from the eyes and hair standing on end, faltering of the voice. And then from Namabhas, one should come to the Shuddhanam, or pure chanting. And by chanting purely, then one's sarup, or one's identity, will be revealed to him. Everything will be clear, and at that point, he'll become fully Krishna conscious, and he won't have any chance. There will be less chance that he will fall back into the material world, fall back into Maya. It may be questioned why people come to Krishna consciousness then leave Krishna consciousness, and the answer is because they weren't chanting purely the Maha Mantra, or they weren't following the instructions of the spiritual master, or so many anarthas are there in the heart. And Lord Chaitanya told Sanatana Goswami in Chaitanya Charitamrita about the Bhakti Lata Beach and how that creeper can be grow nicely by the process of watering process, hearing and chanting, but the weeds grow along with the creeper. And if one does not recognize, the weeds look like the creeper, they look like the same species, but they're not. So if the weeds grow along with the creeper, then the creeper gets choked out, and all you have left is the weeds. And that's why people leave Krishna consciousness. So one must be very diligent, must be a good gardener, and always try to follow strictly the process of Krishna consciousness, so he won't be allured again and go back in the mature world and have to suffer again and again, repeated birth and death. Hare Krishna. Does anybody have any questions, comments? Question man's not here. All right. Where's the Srila Prabhupada? Gandharaj, Sri Bhagavad-Gita ki jai.